So the Emergencies Act, though, that was taken to court. The act itself was taken to court. And recently, just a couple of weeks ago, a judge ruled that it was, I guess you don't call it unconstitutional there.
No,
What it,
unconstitutional, illegal, I say, because I think that's the most powerful. Illegally enacted, of course, not like a criminal illegality that they're getting handcuffed, but it was found to be an abuse of powers unconstitutional. So, yes, those would be correct words.
so what did how did that come about? What was the evidence presented that the judge just said, yeah, this was insane. You can't, this was illegal.
So just to go back, when I cross-examined the Prime Minister, it was under the Public Order Emergencies Commission. And it was, like I said, an investigatory power, a body that had to look at all the details. And we sat through 6 weeks of evidence of what had happened, and government officials and police said their evidence. And just so you know, and your viewers know, in that case, he's normally a judge, but he had the role of a commissioner. He issued a 2,000-page report and found that the government of Canada and Justin Trudeau was justified in invoking the Emergencies Act. In that case, less than a year later, we have a federal court judge, because as you said, some people in Canada brought an application to the federal court and said that this emergency power was overbroad. It was not justified. It's not reasonable. And in the end, a federal court judge, and this has legal bearing. The Public Order Emergency Commission had no legal bearing. It was just an investigative process. But in this case, it's strong messaging. And you asked about the evidence. There was no good evidence to show that the federal government should have invoked this.
Yeah.
And the judge goes through that. He actually, in his decision, he says, I actually thought I was going to rule in favor of the federal government, but on the evidence of nothing, basically, I had to go and side with this is not justified. And that's what I couldn't believe when we got the decision from the commissioner, Rouleau, in that case, because all of the police authorities said there was no reason. We didn't ask for it. Excuse me. They said we didn't ask for it. One intelligence officer said that crime actually went down in Ottawa. So doesn't really suggest
Right.
that there's big, crazy activity going on.
Right.
And CSIS, which is our CIA, CSIS said, do not invoke the Emergencies Act because it will cause more extreme views. The reason they're here is that they're protesting the government and they don't support this. Don't invoke the Emergencies Act. And they did. So there was no evidence to do it. And this was an excellent decision that finally put a little bit of perspective into what's been going on here.
What kind of news did that make when the judge made that decision? Did that make mainstream news at all in Canada that Justin Trudeau was wrong in invoking this act?
It did.
Oh, good.
I
Okay.
think there was no way they could avoid it. They've avoided a lot of other things, but they couldn't avoid this one. And Justin Trudeau's deputy prime minister, Chrystia Freeland, came out immediately saying, we're going to appeal it. And of course, the mainstream media took that to think, well, this isn't over yet, which I am willing to bet they will not be appealing it, because I don't see how they're going to win. And I think that on appeal, that it'll just reinforce the first decision. So mainstream media did say it. But one thing, just going back to what we were talking about too, is where Canadians are at with what's going on. Even with this decision saying it was unjustified, there was no evidence to do it, there's still people that I've seen in Canada saying they were overthrowing the government. They shouldn't have done what they did. These are bad people that came to Ottawa. And I'm like, what more can you have? What more can you want? And if we had a prime minister with any integrity, he would have recognized, my fault here after the slew of other faults he's had and mistakes
Yeah.
he's made. He would say, I really screwed up here, and you'll see my resignation. And that that would be the appropriate thing to do, but we
Yeah.
haven't seen that.
So now with the Emergencies Act, so basically the government says, so the judge says this is illegal. The government says we're gonna challenge this. Of course, they always say that. When they said it was, so this is my big question on this, because here in the United States, a lot of our cases with the mandates and with, all the various mandates and lockdowns have been challenged in courts. But the problem with the challenge is that when they go to court and we get wins on our side, the wins are like, oh, because this was arbitrary and capricious. So, you didn't apply it to everybody. So therefore this was illegal. It was all or nothing. Or they would say something like, well, it was the wrong government body. This particular government agency doesn't have the authority. It's not on the merit of this was just unconstitutional, and you can't do that to the American people. None of our cases have been won on that. And that's what we want. We want to win on the government can't do this to you. But instead, our wins have been, well, that branch of government can't do this to you. Or if they're going to do it, they have to do it to everybody, not just the poor people. So the win that you guys had up there with the Emergencies Act, was that because of like a constitution, like a you cannot do this to people? Or is there a loophole in that judgment that would allow
No,
the government to do it later?
yeah, no, so there were two wins that I think are worth highlighting. And it's interesting that if the did you say it was the wrong person that was sued, the wrong body in the United States,
No,
or the
what they were claiming when the judgment would come down, the
yeah,
judge would say, "Okay, you win." He'd hand the win to the anti-mandate crowd or the
yeah,
people that were fighting the government, but the win wasn't on constitutional grounds. The win was on, well, it was because this was the wrong, it wasn't
body, yeah.
yeah, it wasn't the win of like the government can't do this to you because that's against the law, that's against the Constitution. It was just like, well, that it can't be OSHA.
Okay, so yes, there we haven't had too many of those wins either, and but like, and I don't know if you talk to lawyers in those cases. I think those are still very strong wins because there is one like that in Alberta that I'm working on right now too, where what happened is the public health officer is the only one supposed to be making decisions on these public health orders. And what we found out through a court case is she was allowing the elected officials to make those decisions. So in the end, those were illegally granted orders. So the wrong person was making the orders. But why I think that's so important is that our elected officials can only do what is allowed in the legislation and follow it. So if they're going outside of the bounds of their body or their authority, that is an illegal action. It's administratively illegal, and it is very strong. And citizens should appreciate and understand that there's a problem there, because then it suggests that they can do something else in another situation. So you really have to hold them account there. In the federal court case, that was a win on constitutional grounds. The judge in that case said that there were some charter breaches that were happening. And in Canada, we have seen a lot of the same thing that I think you were saying earlier, is these applications were made to court. And what we saw a lot of before is the judges hands off saying, this is a public health issue. I'm a judge. This isn't about the law. So public health has authority here, and we're going to defer the authority to the public health. So we've had a lot of that because it was that balance of individual rights over the public good. And the judge was like, I'm not getting involved in that mess. And so we had a lot of losses on those grounds. Yes.
Wow. Yeah,
But
that's
I
really
think there's hope. So
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
very optimistic, which otherwise I wouldn't be doing this, I think.
Hey guys, be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you like this segment. Now, you might be wondering, this seems like it's part of a bigger show. You're right, it is. The full show is at KimIversonShow.com. So what you're watching is just a clip. And if you want to get the full experience, then you got to go to KimIversonShow.com. The show airs Monday through Friday, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. That is where you can watch the full show. Here, you just get clips. So click on the link down below, go to the full show, enjoy. Otherwise, I'll see you next time right here. And be sure, once again, like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.